And we're live. I can't tell you how much I miss saying that. It's so good to be back. Um, this lighting's a little bit weird, giving me some weird face shadow, but I guess we're rolling with it. Um, wow, I missed you guys. It's been a few months. I've been doing a lot of exciting things lately. I would say one of the hardest parts about the past few months actually was that I miss the community. I miss hosting these discussions. I miss being involved. Um, so it's good to be back. I guess I'll just start by updating everybody on kind of what I've been doing, where I'm at right now in life, and then some updates about the future of the channel, and then we'll be bringing on a special guest, and then we'll just go with the flow. Maybe we'll do a call-in show. People can hop on the stream. We'll answer some questions. We'll have fun with it. Um, Let me know where in the world you guys are tuning in from. I see some familiar faces. Alaram, good to see you. Unknown Leaf, good to see you. NH, I don't know if we've met. Nice to meet you, NH. Amiel, good to see you. Insani, you too. Cool. So, for those who don't know, around 6 months ago, me and one of my closest friends, we started a company called Grateful Giraffes. The goal behind the company really is to build a wellness brand, right? To bring gratitude practices, which are shown to be one of the single best ways to elevate well-being, to people all over the world. And the way we plan to do this is by building a strong community and culture around gratitude, and to build different products and services to aid in these daily practices. Now, as we started building community and started promoting our brand and bringing in new community members, we understood that the people joining our community were primarily people of influence. We were bringing in business owners, we were bringing in thought leaders, we're bringing in influencers, and then we understood that gratitude is not necessarily the product. It's a feature. Um, we actually, what we're building is not a gratitude community. We're building a community of leaders, of future leaders from all walks of life, and we're giving them a network to connect with, to learn from, to collaborate with. But not only just in the business sense, right? We're trying to curate and foster a community of leaders who are dedicated to making the world a better place. We want to give them not only a business support system, but also an emotional support system, right? Leaders um, of all sorts have so much pressure on them, and often they're so dedicated in achieving their goal of financial success that it takes a toll on their mental health. And I'll be the first to acknowledge that building a company is extremely stressful and does take a toll on our mental health. So this community will be one that creates a support system for entrepreneurs, for influencers, for anybody who views himself as a leader, right? Really, the doors are open to anybody. So that's what we're building. Um, where does Grateful Giraffes come in? So this is our NFT collection. I know many people may have heard about NFTs. There's a lot of negative hype about them. Primarily, I guess the negative hype is two reasons, because a lot of the projects are scams, and there's just a lack of understanding of what they are and what they mean. I'm not going to get too deep in it because we could spend hours on that, but our NFTs are just memberships. If you hold a Grateful Giraffe NFT, you have a lifetime membership to our community. We've sold around 1,200 of these NFTs so far, and we have another around 6,000 to sell. But that's all there will ever be. So it's a scarce resource, and that's why people are intrigued by it and want to get one of the only 7,777 Grateful Giraffes that will ever exist. So that's like what makes the NFT model appealing. People get in early. It's a way to have skin in the game from a very early stage. And you can imagine if there's only a few thousand of these NFTs, but we one day have a community of millions, well, the supply remains the same, but the demand should continuously increase if we succeed. So that's how that's very high level, what we're doing. I don't want to dedicate the whole stream just to Grateful Drafts. This is the Sulha channel after all, but if anybody's interested in what we're doing and wants to get involved in this community in one way or another, whether you want to buy an NFT or you just want to, like, there are ways to join the community without buying an NFT. You just don't get the same access if you're not a giraffe holder. Reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you about it. I'd love to, get to interact with the Sulha community more on a day-to-day basis, and that's one way I can achieve that. One thing we just did, well, I've really been absent the past few months. So we did this gratitude wall in Tel Aviv. It was a 2-week art installation, where people came and wrote what they're grateful for, and thousands of people in those 2 weeks came and shared gratitude on this wall. And we're just so inspired by the results, seeing thousands of people take a moment out of their day and share gratitude. We felt like we're making Tel Aviv more grateful. Not to mention, it's a billboard with their brand on it. So we just viewed it as such an awesome model. And then we said, how do we take this to the next level? And then so we said, let's buy a bus. Let's turn the bus into a gratitude wall where people can write on the bus what they're grateful for. And let's drive across the United States, go to the different Web3 conferences. Web3, that's Web 3.0, which is like blockchain technology and all that, and just meet people along the way. So we drove 7,000 miles in 6 weeks. On the way, we flew to Mexico for a conference and flew back. We did 14 states, 20 plus cities, met thousands of people. Very inspiring, very inspiring. People in the South are so fucking nice. The people who are most stigmatized by the mainstream media as being like a bunch of like gun-toting racists. Those are honestly some of the nicest, most generous people you'll meet in the entire country. So it's interesting how they're perceived. And just because somebody's generous and kind doesn't mean don't they don't hold a view that is harmful or problematic. And we see this every single day in the Israel-Palestine conflict. But this road trip was awesome, very intense, very tiring, but also inspiring and exciting. So it was definitely a cool experience. As I mentioned earlier, one of the hardest things about the past few months is really not getting to give any attention to this channel because, the Israel-Palestine conflict and the Sulha community is just something I care dearly about, and not being able to focus on it has caused me some amount of pain. I am going to make a real effort to start doing more live streams. I don't know if I could commit to one a week, but I'm going to try. But I have been, in the process of trying to find people to run the channel in my absence. And, there's been a few people who have really taken over the Discord server and done a tremendous job moderating it and fostering the community there. And they are now also going to start putting content up on the YouTube channel. So we could expect content not only from me occasionally, but also from some of our YouTube, some of our Discord mods. And we also have somebody else who's going to be joining, which we'll talk about that more next week. She is going to be coming in and taking the lead on the 100 Voices project. For those who don't recall, that was the interview project where we want to interview 100 people living on the land and build a solution based off collecting real data from people who live here. So we're working on that as well. So, the main reason I'm doing this live stream today is, first of all, to say I miss you, I love you, and more content coming soon. I'm going to bring on Natan, who's been one of the Discord mods, who's been doing an awesome job. Natan will share a little bit about what he's been working on, what the future has. Natan, real quick, before I bring you on, just a few more, acknowledging the comments. Good to see you guys. Danito, Floodland, MK Matt, Jillian Levitt. Good to see you all. Paulina, who is stuck in transit right now, is also one of the mods. She'll be on the channel. You'll see her in the next few weeks for sure. Yossi Tov goes, Adar, your absence has led me to slip in a more radical position. Please continue to make videos again so I can become an enlightened centrist once again. I don't think I deserve that much credit, but I appreciate it, and that honestly just motivates me more to do this. G Druggy, what does that mean? Don't read my comment and is back in. I'm not sure I understand what you mean, but good to see you here, G or Gee. Mr. Hagen, so Tal Hagen, good to see you in the chat. So Tal also, Tal, you and I need to catch up because we need to get you more on the channel, right? Really, the idea is this to be a community-run channel. I don't want it to be dependent on me, right? Like, we're doing peace building. anybody can contribute to peace building as long as they're oriented towards peace, right? If they want to see a peaceful resolution and they're open-minded and can engage with the other side respectfully, then they have a place on this channel. So anybody watching this, if you want to get involved, reach out. As far as I'm concerned, having different people do content or live streams every night of the week, let's fucking do it. Why not? There we go. A few more shout outs. MBL National Billboard League, good to see you. And Yasmin, good to see you too. Cool. Natan, what's up, brother? Can you hear me, Natan?
Greetings. I can hear you barely. It's near midnight in India, so um, the internet's not doing so well. It seems it might
Yeah,
also be Streamlabs. I'm not entirely sure.
there seems to be a pretty big lag. So what we'll do is you can it's going to make a conversation between us pretty unbearable. I could tell already, but I'm going to give you the floor
Right.
to just kind of share what the Discord has been doing lately, and what your plan with alongside Paulina and whoever else is involved, what your plan for the channel is. Take a few minutes, and then just because of the lag, we'll say goodbye, and then I'll continue engaging with the community a little bit. But good to have you here, Nathan.
Good to see you here as well. Thank you so much. Um, so a beautiful thing happened when Adar began his hiatus from the channel, and that was that the Discord continued. The activity persisted. The conversations, the discussion, and the debate all continued. Um, and we felt that as a community, we came together and we felt that continuing the spirit of Sulha and content production was an important thing to do. Um, and part of how we think that we should do that is to move into more of a discussion format. We don't intend to totally remove the debates. We still want to have the characters such as you know uh, 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 Judah Maccabee and other colorful characters back to have contentious debates as well. But we think it's important to foster more conversations and more understanding between people, because one of the issues that we've had in booking recently is just being able to find Palestinian members, even of the community, who want to debate. I think that debating is it can almost be destructive if it's all that happens. And a lot of the beauty in the Discord community is the conversation and the understandings that we get from each other. Um, so yeah, I think that's the update that I'd like to bring. Once again, thank you, Adar, for having us on, for creating this community, and for letting us move it forward as a community.
Awesome, Natan. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to see what you guys do, and I definitely agree. If we think back to our debate series, I think we did probably like 35 debates, and probably around only five, six, seven of those were like really contentious and like actual debates. Most of them were just conversations. Um, one provides higher entertainment value, the other provides better like reconciliatory value. So, uh, you know, maybe a contentious debate here and there is great, but I definitely agree with what you said, that we need to conversations is what it's all about. Nathan, if you're cool with it, let's try to keep you on. It seems like the internet is working well enough. Um, happy to
Right.
happy to hear just what the
For
community
sure.
thinks. Take some questions. Um, I would say let's get those super chats going, but I feel like a chutzpah asking for super chats after such a long hiatus. So I don't want super chats today, but once the content starts coming back on a regular basis, let's get those super chats going. And by the way, the any revenue the channel makes, both ad revenue, super chats, and Patreon, will be shared by everybody contributing to the channel. So just keep that in mind. We'll be running like a co-op of sorts. um,
For sure, and possibly used to as a small incentive to encourage more educational speakers to come and join us and facilitate those discussions. You know, because the investment of having some educator come on can last for for a long period of time and can really move the discussion in an interesting direction.
yeah, yeah. So, Natan, I have a question for you. So, one of the challenges this channel has always had, and actually all the peace building space has always had, is in underrepresentation of Palestinians. Um, and the underrepresentation comes for many reasons. One, there's a language barrier, right? Most Palestinians don't feel comfortable engaging in English. There's a strong culture of anti normalization that exists amongst Palestinians, where either Palestinians themselves believe that any form of communication with Israelis is wrong and essentially being a traitor. Uh, and then there's people who don't Palestinians who don't quite hold that view on anti-normalization, but at the same time they don't want backlash that they may get from their community. So there's social uh, there's a risk of social consequences for coming on the channel. And actually, we've had um, Palestinians who have gotten backlash for coming on the channel. Um, we've had some Palestinians who came on the channel, did a live stream, and then asked me to take the video down, which I did. And it wasn't easy because two two of the most viewed debates have been removed from the channel because the Palestinian came back and asked me to take it down. So it's challenging, you know. So the underrepresentation has always existed. Natan, do you have any ideas how we can balance that moving forward? How we could have more Palestinians on the channel?
So a little backstory. My job right now primarily is working on a film on the topic of the Israel-Palestine conflict, and as a Jewish production team, we're also struggling with the same issues. Um, but the method that's worked best for us is through building a good name for ourselves among the activist communities. And there will be, for example, Omar Barghouti. We haven't gotten him on yet, but the first time we contacted him, he didn't reply. Then we interviewed one of his friends, and they said, "Hey, you guys are great. I'll talk to Omar. I've got his personal number. I'll tell him to get back to you." And they did, and at least he was in contact with us. He's a bit ephemeral and aloof, it seems, still, even though we've now sort of done the rounds with multiple friends of his, and they've all tried to vouch for us. Uh, but I do think that creating goodwill uh, through through productive discussions is probably the best bet, and the best thing that we can do as a community.
Cool. Thanks for that update, Natan. Hold on, we did get a super chat. Adam Alabia, no super chats then? Got it. 15 shekels. Thank you, brother. I miss you. Um, Marvin Vargas, good to see you too. So I'm seeing Miko Peled. So Marvin saying bring on Miko Peled. So actually, just so you know, we had Miko. For those who don't know, Miko is a very staunch anti-Zionist Israeli. His father was a pretty well-known general here in Israel, but Miko himself wants to dismantle the state. We did have him scheduled on the show, and then a few days before, he actually pulled out and didn't give any reason. I'm not sure why. He was actually meant to debate Emily Schrader, who is a social media personality. That would have been an interesting one, honestly. But we could probably reach back out and get Miko on. Yeah, yeah. Let's go for it. Cool. What? Let's see what else is up with chat. And Nathan, feel free to chime in at any time. If you guys have questions, let them pop. Should we open it up to? Should we do a call-in show? Should we? I said we'll
Yeah,
go on
let's
free
do a
flow.
community
Okay,
show.
fine. All right, guys. I just dropped the link to StreamYard in the chat. Whoever wants to join, just join the link. We'll bring you on for a little call in. Honestly, some of my favorite live streams have been the call in shows. I just for some reason there's something fun about it. It's interesting. So growing up, my dad is pretty conservative, way more so than I am. That's for sure. And growing up, I would ride in the car with him, and I would hear like Sean Hannity and Michael Savage and all these like really right wing radio talk show hosts, and I was so inspired. Like growing up, I was also like a very right wing, and my ambitions as a 14-year-old one day was to be a conservative radio talk show host. And what's interesting is this is pretty similar, and I guess that's why the call-in aspect that I vibe with it. It reminds me of those radio talk show hosts I used to listen to growing up, and in the car driving with my dad. And I will say that my dad has moved closer to the center since I've gotten older and engaged with him on a multitude of different topics. Same with my mom, by the way. Adar Shapiro. Honestly, I think I take offense to that. There are some topics where I think Ben Shapiro is on point, but he's just more than anything. He's very smart. He's very quick thinking. He's a great debater. But if you actually take time to like break down his arguments, you see that they're not extremely sound. Like I'd call him intelligent, but not an intellectual. Like I don't think he's entirely. I don't want to call him intellectually dishonest because I don't think that it's intentional. I don't think he's being deceitful. But like a lot of his arguments are pretty easy to break down if you actually think about them. It's just when you're debating him, he could respond very quickly and make a great case. So he's a very good debater. But I think there's some. I think if you put him in a debate with like another quick thinking person who's actually an intellectual, then I think they'd wipe the floor with Ben Shapiro. That's my feeling. But feel free to push back on that. I know he's very supported in in some communities. Daniel Fagan goes, good. Hey, I saw you yesterday. Good to see you, Daniel. It was good seeing you yesterday. Bumped into him randomly in Tel Aviv. Ben Moshe, dude, where were you? I missed the talks and conversations. Yeah, well, I talked about that at the beginning, so you could go to the beginning and see what I've been doing, what I've been working on, what the future of the channel is. Now we're kind of just shooting the shit. Yeah, Yoav goes when he meaning Ben Shapiro debates those who are not college kids, his arguments are easy to dismantle. Yeah. There's there's definitely we often seeing him like debate. I guess what we could call like lower hanging fruit, not great challenges, but I think there's a lot of people who would really expose him in a lot of his arguments. Anyways, chat's pretty quiet.
I think that part of his genius is I think the part of Ben Shapiro's genius is that he makes his arguments, even though he talks really fast and puts a lot of inflection, he makes it very elementary. The language that he uses is both sophisticated enough, but very understandable to pretty much
True.
anyone.
True. Yeah.
With
yeah,
like a ninth grade education.
Right. Yeah. It's do I even want to open this can of worms? It's not Israel Palestine related, but like the daily, what do they call it? Daily Wire is like his media publication. And then there's that guy Matt Walsh, who recently created a documentary called "What Is a Woman," that's extremely controversial. And honestly, I don't even know if I'm prepared to talk about this. I just kind of popped in my mind. But he goes around asking like people who are in the what's that community called? The gender, what's it called? Maybe trans rights activists, and as well as professors. And he asked them, "What is a woman?" And no one can give a clear answer. Um, and he's kind of just trying to expose the trans movement. Um, and it's actually an interesting point, right? Like, I feel like for the trans movement to and by the way, the trans movement's actually been very, very successful, because if you think about it, they're a very small percentage of the population, and they've successfully brought their cause to the forefront of of mainstream media attention, political commentary, right? So that's success in terms of getting your cause out there. But I do think there's a legit question to be asked there, like, what is a woman? If you can't answer what is a woman, then it's hard to say that somebody can just be born in a man's body but actually a woman if you can't actually define that. Um, Although I will defend that case, what is a woman? I think you could say a woman is the social construct that is generally connected to female, um, the female sex, not gender, right? Like that's one way to frame it. I don't even know why I got into
Right.
this. I don't even know if the community is interested in this, but it's something I've been thinking of because he kept
The
asking him,
community is interested, it seems.
"Are they
At least on the Discord, it generates conversation. Let's
okay?
just say that.
Fine." Um,
But yeah, I really I used to be very interested in the topic, but I have noticed that there's a lack of concrete definitions within the community, and I think that that really harms the effectiveness of their dialogue. It's an accomplishment that they're so prominent in the in the social zeitgeist, but I think it's a real shame that they haven't sort of unified under definitions that are beneficial to their to their desired outcomes.
hmm, yep,
I think that that's something that they really need to work on.
yep. Good point. So we do have some comments. Was Yoav goes was very sad to see Jordan Peterson join the Daily Wire. Yeah, he's been he's I I do respect a lot about Jordan Peterson. Like there's a lot that I'll say it this way. I enjoy listening to him. I enjoy a lot of the points he makes, but I think throughout the years, especially with like he was very sick, and he hasn't quite been the same since he's come back. But um, he's not. It seems like he's been radicalized a little bit, and his general tone is more like reactive and angry. Um, so I hope he gets back on the path, where he could be more calm and collective and make his arguments from that place. Um, Generally, like people's enemies define them. So I think what happened with Jordan Peterson is, the left has really made him seem like he's some monster, like he's some Nazi. So, when one group is attacking you, you seek solace in another group, and that group happens to be like people more on the right, the Daily Wire and them. So I think that's a lot of where it's coming from. We saw something very similar with Dave Rubin. The more the left attacked him, the more right wing he became. Really, if you're very like principled in your beliefs, getting attacked by one group shouldn't actually move you to the right or the left, because your ideas are grounded in something beyond just who likes you and who doesn't. But I think it's very natural to to seek comfort in a group that will accept you. So whenever the left or the right go after somebody, it seems to move them in the opposite direction, which is just another case to be made for, we should engage people respectfully more than just try to assume the worst about them and their intentions. Um, cool. So yeah, I'm seeing the trans issue
It's
is very
indeed doom in
popular.
here.
Jillian asked if I'm debating myself. Yeah, yeah, I'm trying to, not debating myself, but trying to think, honestly on these issues for sure. So let's see another question. So, oh, Ben Shapiro will be in Tel Aviv on Thursday. Interesting. So, whoever wants to ask Ben Shapiro a question, challenge him. That's your opportunity. Should I go? Should I go speak to Ben? Should I try to get on the mic? What would I challenge him on? I don't know. I guess it depends what he's there to talk about. Honestly, he'd probably talk about Israel Palestine. I feel like that might be an area where I could best challenge him. Huh? Maybe I'll do it. I need to check. I'm so busy, but I'll check. Daniel, can you send me a link to that? Um,
I still haven't forgiven Ben Shapiro for what he said about rap music.
what do you say about rap music?
I I forget the exact quote, but he basically said that rap music is garbage and lacks artistic merit, and from and he is a classically trained violinist, which is why
Sure.
it's even more disappointing to me because there's so many. If you're only talking about the background music, there's so many hip hop producers that are, you know, that are producing very complex stuff music theory wise. You know, maybe not all, certainly not all of it, but it's a it's a little simple to or simplified to choose the lowest common denominator and say this is the defining factor of a
Yeah,
genre.
yeah. I would agree with that. So I'm not extremely like musically talented. Interesting side note: I actually used to own a record label, and I actually still have a music startup that's up and running and quite successful. That I'm not active in there, but I am a partner there. I won't get into that now, but feel free to ask me about that at a later date. It's called Alpha Music, awesome company. Um, but like I don't.
Mm.
It's not like I understand music theory or anything like that. But it seems like comparing, like I hear it a lot, like a lot of like white supremacists, they say classical music is beautiful and intelligent, and then like jazz or rap is just a bastardization of that, and it's simple and dumb. But it seems like people who understand music theory actually say that something like jazz is even more complex and sophisticated than something like classical. I think it's how it's perceived culturally, which gives people the impression of how that music is. What I would say, where I think what drives Ben Shapiro's comment here is that rap music, a lot of it has very vulgar like lyrics, and if you're listening to certain type of rap music, it's going to influence the way you see the world, right? It's could be racist, misogynistic, like it's a lot of it is hateful. So I think that's like I know he had like a thing where about WAP, wet ass pussy. He was upset with it, and because he doesn't want songs about wet pussies to be popular in society. So I think that's probably what drives his dislike for rap music more so than like the actual theory behind like the rhythm and beats and harmony and all that. I think so. Um,
Right.
and then
Well,
he,
okay, so Leg came up with the exact quote, and he said that rap music is not music because there's no melody or harmony, just rhythm. Yeah, which is a totally
hmm,
ridiculous statement. I mean, you know, if you listen to a Kanye West song, if you listen to a like a Tyler the Creator song, or you know, countless artists, they're uh, yeah, it's very bizarre for a classically trained
yeah,
musician to say something like that. But as you said, you know, sort of drawing to the coming to the conclusion that you did, it makes a lot more sense. Um,
I do see some
what's his
question
name?
stuff. I just want to read
Yeah,
some.
Nate Dubin asked a good question.
Yeah, I
He
was just
asked
gonna
you,
read
Adar,
that.
what are your predictions? Yeah.
So I actually haven't had time to really look into it, but what is the polling showing is the question. Israeli election polling. I'll tell you my predictions. Let me see what the polling says. Poll C, Gaunt Star Party's is third largest. But election deadlock unbroken. Interesting. Times of Israel, at least. It's possible this election won't resolve it. We might have a similar thing where we're going for for months, election after election. MK Matt, I like this. I don't know what this was in reference to. I'm not sure what this was in reference to, but it is kind of true. MK Matt goes, that's basically the libertarian way, presenting seemingly very simple solutions to complicated subjects, very tempting but often misleading. So I think that is a legitimate critique to many libertarian arguments. I think it's a well put statement. Um, it's like, yeah, how do you manage a complex society? Oh, you just, you know, uh, let the markets solve them. Markets do things best, right? That's the argument. Maybe now I'm oversimplifying the libertarian argument. Um, and by the way, I actually do consider
Right.
myself a social libertarian. So on social issues, I want as little regulation and as little government control as possible. Like people should, generally speaking, be free unless they're infringing upon the rights of somebody else. And also, I do think that we should have less regulations on small businesses. But the idea that markets solve all problems and you don't need government and markets will figure it out. Seems like a pipe dream more than a realistic solution to the challenges we currently have in government. And I'm very critical of government as well. I just don't think no government solves the problems in government. I think you'll just have corporations acting like governments at that point. So we moved from Grateful Giraffes to Israel Palestine to trans rights to libertarianism. Now we're back to Israeli politics. Polling, Nate says polling shows a deadlock. Yeah, so let's see. I mean, we still have a few months of campaigning and ads, and someone might pull ahead. We'll see. But that government, interestingly, they lasted longer than many thought. The most diverse government in the history of Israel. Good on them. Uh, yeah, I've been gone the past few months. I really have not. Um, I really have not been able to follow what's going on. So I really am coming from a place of ignorance in a lot of what I'm saying now. It was actually interesting. So when I was really like, the more I immersed myself in Grateful Drafts, the harder it was for me to like, I felt like I was forgetting everything I knew about Israel Palestine. I felt like I couldn't come and do a live stream and be a good host or engage in a good discussion. And then I was recently in Barcelona. That was the last leg of my recent trip. And somebody hearing I'm from Israel asked me what I thought about the conflict, and it flowed out like no time has passed. So then I'm like, oh, okay, it's still there. It's still in my brain somewhere. So it did give me confidence that I could potentially uh, focus on both topics simultaneously. So uh, that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to do more live streams, because I feel like I could potentially manage it. Just we have limited cognitive bandwidth, so we gotta decide what to focus on. Steve Elisa, Adar, what's your take on the anti-BDS law and sign a contractual pledge to not boycott Israel? So again, this is a topic I haven't looked in deeply, but at face value, BDS should not be outlawed. If you don't like it, you could fight it. You could create a counter movement, but to outlaw a movement trying to boycott, divest, and sanction a government, why would that be illegal? It doesn't make sense. Honestly, and I might be getting into offensive territory, but it's it's stuff like this that kind of when there's a case that BDS engages in anti-Semitism. I don't think BDS is inherently anti-Semitic, but if you look at some of their conduct on college campuses, um, targeting Jews, that's anti-Semitic. You're equating Jews to Israel, right? So I get that. That doesn't, but that is doesn't mean the organization itself is anti-Semitic. That could just be members acting out of line. Um, that being said, when people see BDS get outlawed, I actually think that in itself fuels anti-Semitism, because if you actually listen to anti-Semites, and because leading up to my debate with Adam Green, I actually really listened to what they were saying. They view Jews as exerting control over the United States, right? Very tiny population, 2% of the United States, but having disproportionate control over policy, over media. Something like outlawing BDS, there's no way that actually is helping in the big picture, at least not in the fight on anti-Semitism. There's just no way. Like if you go see what anti-Semites are talking about, this is what they're talking about. They see Jews running America. Obviously, they're going to outlaw BDS because they have that much control. So again, well, I said this is controversial territory because whenever you point to something that feels anti-Semitism, you get accused of victim blaming. That's not what I'm doing. It's clearly not what I'm doing. We can understand cause and effect, like what actions lead to fan the flames of hate. I don't think that should be controversial. It is in today's society, but I don't think it should be. Jews are not to blame for anti-Semitism. Anti-Semites are to blame for anti-Semitism. But it seems like those fighting anti-Semitism are actually those who often fuel it the most. And again, it's not victim blaming. It's just a matter of fact, you know. And if I offended somebody, I'm sorry. I don't mean offense, but I think it's okay to acknowledge which actions fuel which flames. I don't think we should be scared of these difficult conversations. And I do think
Yeah, and it's very
yeah, one last thing, and while I do think that anti-Semites are responsible for are to blame for anti-Semitism, I do think Jews have the power to combat it, and I think the means we often combat it are not only not productive, they're counterproductive. They fuel the flames. But Natan, all you, brother.
right. Yeah, I was going to say that the strategy of BDS itself is far preferable to previous um, resistance strategies, and so on that level, I welcome the concept, and I just also I think that also the strategy of outlawing a peaceful protest or a theoretically peaceful boycott of the state itself or of various institutions is misguided for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I also have seen that it turns into more of a personal boycott of Israelis or Jews, um, simply for being connected tangentially to Israel, Palestine, or connected tangentially to government nonprofits or government observed nonprofits. That themselves might be very, very left and supportive of Palestinian rights.
Oh, look, we have Danito. You want to come on? I'll bring you on in a moment, but change your icon. You don't need to show your face, but change your icon to something nicer because I want the aesthetic of the stream to be nice. Um, Marvin asks, Adar, who are the white supremacists? Yet to see any white supremacists of consequence. Couple drunk hillbillies, media touts, white supremacists, Nazis. Actually, I agree with you completely. I think the whole white supremacist thing is a boogeyman used by the media and by the far left in order to not only like rally around a common enemy, but also just to find a scapegoat for the problems America faces. I do think, though, I'll put it this way, that you do have there is like institutionalized racist in the sense, not that there's racism written into law, although there is a case to be made that some policy is racial. For example, the fact that the penalty for crack is far worse than the penalty for coke, and if you actually look at how bad they are comparatively, it's not that different. But coke is like a rich person drug and crack is generally a poor black person drug. So that's like an example of a case that could be made that's a racial policy. But generally speaking, what I mean by institutionalized racism, it's the majority of the positions of power currently held in the United States are by white people, and you can make a case that the average white person isn't racist. No, I don't think that's true, not at all. But I do think the average white person might have some biases against black people because of upbringing, media, movies they watch, experience potentially, and if you have majority of people in power have some biases against black people, you can make the case that that then would affect black people as a collective in the United States. I do, however, think that today, um, because of like the very strong, like I think today with the very strong social justice movement, a lot of companies, Fortune 500 companies, are really working to bring in people of color into their ranks. So I'm not sure if I'm not quite sure that, at least in that regard, institutional racism is still holding black people back. Potentially, the strongest case could be made on institutional racism is in the court system, or like police treatment of certain people, right? So if the majority of cops in a black neighborhood are white, it's possible, right? They're getting a worse end of the deal. If most judges are white, it's possible that they're treating blacks worse than white people. They don't even need to actively be supremacists. Like, they don't need to hold an actual view that white people are more valuable than blacks. But if they subconsciously have some negative sentiment towards black people, then they may view them more harshly in the court of law, right? So I do think there is some merit to the talk of institutional racism and what you'd call white supremacy. But the way the woke, as we'll call them, talks about it, and the Democratic Party very much has adopted this narrative. It And I'm going to say this without trying to get too conspiratorial, but the political parties are very happy with Americans fighting each other, right? Like, white Americans should view minorities stealing their jobs as the threat. Um, Black or people of color should view the white supremacists as the threat. What this does is actually gets Americans fighting each other rather than coming together around common cause and bringing about change. And if you look at like the social justice movement, it's very shallow on policy. You hear a lot of vague concepts that are just not even clear how you attain them, like um, dismantle and rebuild the government, or defund, or not even defund, well, abolish the police, right? That was going around in different activist circles. It's a lot of vague concepts that you don't even know what to do with, and a lot of it is focused on blame. Like, how often do you hear the focus of an activist saying white people need to be better? Check your privilege, right? It's a lot of attacking, a lot of blame, and it's a lot of supporting these vague concepts that it's not clear what policy solves them. Let's talk about policy, right? What policy can help Black Americans? Ending the war on drugs, having a major criminal justice reform, not only courtroom but also prisons. Changing how public schools are funded. Currently, public schools are funded um, by property tax, which means if you live in a poor neighborhood, that school will have less funding. How's that fair, right? Every child should have equal opportunity. You don't have equal opportunity if your school has less funding. So poor Americans go to worse schools. Fucked up. They should change that. Um, none of this is really at the center of conversation of the woke left. They don't talk about policy that can actually help people. And here's the thing, and this is why this topic really bothers me. Every policy I just said helps white Americans as well. There is an unseen allyship between Black Americans and the white working class. They have so much to rally together and change in America. And if they work together, they can transform the country. But instead, they're pitted against each other by the political parties who make them seem like they're enemies instead of working together for real change. And it's quite convenient that's what they do. So, yeah, I take big issue with the political parties, what they focus on, and how they pit Americans up against each other. But the boogeyman of the white supremacists, that's not how you elevate Black Americans. It's actually, um, you know, real policy that can uplift them, and perhaps a reconciliation process between, white and Black Americans. Which, again, reconciliation does not come by demonizing white people, which has become the norm amongst those on the far left. So again, you're not going to make friends by demonizing people. You're only going to uh, fuel the flame. And again, that again is, someone could say that's victim blaming, but no. if you're going to be demeaning towards white people, you're fueling racism. It's as simple as that. You know, I'm not victim blaming. I'm just saying a matter of fact statement. Those you hate become more extreme. Cool. Sorry for that rant. I guess feel like I've had a lot I've wanted to say the past few months and haven't really had an outlet for it. So great to be here, guys. Danita, what's up?
Oh, hello. Thanks for bringing me on. Uh, I I guess the one thing I have to say in regards to your what you described it as your rant from earlier is yeah, the policies that you described, like the allocation of resources towards black communities uh, and reform to the criminal justice system and to the police. These are very much things that the woke left, as you described it, or as I understand by what you mean as the woke left, that's what they advocate for. Of course, some go further than that, right? For like abolition of the police, prisons, whatever. But generally, these are policies that have widespread support among the American left, from what I've seen.
Yeah, I would agree. Wide spread support, yes. But if you are looking at the actual conversations and what the focus is on, it's on vague concept and policies that aren't popular. And you could research this just through viewing either hashtags on Twitter or Google searches. Right, this gives you a good indication of what people are talking about, what people are writing articles about, um, and you'll notice some interesting things. But abolish and defund the police was, I believe, the single most popular policy proposal by the woke left during the George Floyd protests. Do you know that most black Americans don't even support that? And most white Americans definitely don't support that either. So why was that the focus of their attention? Why was that the loudest voices in the room, the most popular voices in the room? Um, if you look at like the conversation on white privilege, for example, right? If you want to have a nuanced understanding of privilege, white privilege exists, and it's really majority privilege. So any country where there's a majority population, well, I don't want to say any country. There might be some outliers, but most of the times when you're in a country and you are part of the majority group, you're going to have privilege. That's generally how it works. White people being the majority are going to have some privileges, um, but there's socioeconomic privilege. There's height privilege. Tall people have a better an easier time getting jobs and succeeding in life. Intelligence privilege, two-parent household privilege, looks privilege. Attractive people are more successful. Um, right-handed privilege. You should see how hard it is to be left-handed. They don't even like finding scissors for a left-handed person. Not easy. Um, Now, but if you were to now do a Google search of all the different types of privilege, um, you'll see that white privilege has significantly more um, hits than all the other forms of privilege together. Now, what this means is that there's a focus on one type of privilege that doesn't give Americans a nuanced and accurate understanding of what's actually going on in the United States. And what it does is it causes you to view the majority population. Uh, it makes you lose empathy towards white people when all you hear about is white privilege. And there's actually a university study that backed this up. They showed that when they teach students about white privilege and then they tell them a story about a poor white person, they feel less empathetic towards them than the class that didn't hear the lecture on white privilege. So um, again, it's not that the left doesn't talk about these policies. Every policy I proposed is supported on the left, and there's many great activists on the left that are talking about these. I'm really focused on the majority of the noise, the majority of the tension, and what they're doing with their platforms. It's primarily focused on policies that are not popular, and it's focused on demonizing half the population, which does nothing but inflame them. It doesn't breed understanding or unity. It makes them more radical. So that's my issue with it.
Yeah, I certainly agree that there needs to be a shift in the political discourse. I don't think it's specific to the left either, just in general. Specifically in regards to privilege, uh, I think shifting the discourse more so from privilege to oppression could help with that. So instead of saying, "Oh, you're white, you have a certain privilege," "Oh, you're black, so there's a certain disprivilege that you have," and that makes you sympathize with uh, with minority populations. But
Right.
I don't
I
think it's a concept that should be just ignored either.
Yeah, you make a good point, but I'm not sure, and I'm not confident about this. But another concern I have with how the left conducts itself is that they very much like part of succeeding in life is living life with confidence and feeling like you can succeed. Um, when you hear your entire life that you're disprivileged and oppressed, um, I feel like you're less likely to succeed. So it's like, how do we engage with reality, but also give oppressed populations the confidence they need to succeed in life? So I wonder what that balance looks like, right? How you have an honest conversation about what disadvantages certain groups have, but not have that conversation in a way that makes them feel like um, the whole world is against them, and they can't succeed, and then they grow up with a chip on their shoulder and struggle in social situations and are less likely to do well in job interviews, right? Like a lot of that comes down to confidence and believing that you can succeed. So I wonder how you reconcile those two ideas. But I do agree, generally speaking, we should focus on a disprivilege someone has rather than a privilege somebody else has, because the solution is not to pull anybody down, it's to pull other people up. And it seems like a lot of the focus is, let's create equality by pulling white people down. It shouldn't be like that. Let's create equality by elevating those disenfranchised communities. So I do agree with the framing. I just wonder how you do it without uh, like creating like a strong sense of victimhood, which just isn't good for success in life.
Well, if you focus your advocacy more on a general level than a personal level, right? Like instead of this person is disprivileged because they're black, if you talk more so in a community sense, in a population sense, then I think puts less less focus on one person, and then there's an excuse. Oh, I'm not doing well because this and that, even though many times can be the case. Like you can still encourage people to do as much as they can to succeed despite their disprivilege, while still talking about it. If you do it, I think on a more general level.
Yep, I hear that. I hear that. Like there was
I
a
also
video
think.
that, yeah, go ahead, Natan.
I was just you continue yours and then I'll make my point because it might take the conversation in a different direction.
Yeah, I was gonna. A few years ago, this video went viral, and it was a black father with his little daughter looking in the mirror and telling her affirmations to say, and she was saying, "I am the best. I am beautiful. I am smart. I am this," and it was just so inspiring. And it's like that little girl has a much higher chance of success than um, than somebody who's constantly going to hear, "We are oppressed. Be careful of the cops. Be careful of this. Everyone's out to get you." And again, it's not one or the other. I don't say it needs to be one or the other. But when you hear how like many activists speak, and if you hear the mentality of many Black Americans, it is one of, the world is against me. I can't succeed. It's not in my hands. It's in the white man's hand to liberate me. Right. It's very much about taking power and responsibility away from black people and saying it's white people's responsibility. That really is how a lot of the framing goes. So, you know, uh, we need to give people confidence to succeed. It increases their chance of success. Um, but yeah. Again, a lot of it comes down to just having like a nuanced approach to how we discuss these issues. I do see some questions, but Nathan, if you want to comment, you could go for it.
I just wanted to say that there's always a expediency in creating a convenient opponent. Some could even say that you did that just now when you talked about the woke or the left and so on. Likewise, one of the commenters was bringing up this concept of white supremacists, where the white supremacists, so they certainly exist. Both of these groups, these niche groups, exist, and both of them would like to present themselves as the leaders of the right or the leaders of the left. But it's far more. It's much harder to interact with opposing ideas when when they're given the full nuance and the full scope that they inhabit. I think.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. Good point. I wanna. There's some comments, questions, comments. Let's try to get to them. We will sign off soon. It's crazy how time flies when you're having fun. Already an hour plus, but um, David HS, how would you know that you have an unconscious bias when it's unconscious? I think that's a great question. I think it's hard to know, but I do think that if you pay attention to how you feel around certain people and how you act around certain people, you could start to identify your unconscious bias. I'll be the first to admit it. I have unconscious bias about pretty much every single group, distinct group. I just do. Um, I don't think that you will see a difference in how I treat people because I'm aware of it, but I don't. Yeah, I in my mind hold stereotypes about all the groups. You know, cancel me, right? But again, I think acknowledging it is perfect is important, and just working on understanding where these biases come from, and most importantly, not acting on them. Right? It's okay to have them. We shouldn't act on them, but I also think that um, I also think that the way to change unconscious bias is just to create a society that doesn't ingrain certain ideas into people's minds. So I don't think the school system gives us unconscious biases towards certain groups. I haven't been in school in years, but I don't recall anything like that. But I do think if you see how the media reports on certain events, and if you see how groups are depicted in Hollywood, for example, that's going to give people unconscious bias. So it's tricky, right? Let me give you a clear example. Let's say you make a movie. Let's say you live in a place with all white people. You don't know any black people, but you watch a movie that is depicting black people like gangsters. Um, that might give those white people the impression that black people are gangsters. Now, some black people are gangsters. Are you not allowed to make a movie about a real group of people that exist, black gangsters, right? So one can make the case in making a movie about them, you're just reinforcing unconscious bias. But the other case would be like, why can't we make a movie about things that exist? I don't know the solution. It's tricky. Like I do think those in the media, those who make movies, should try to be responsible and show like a good representation of people across the board. Maybe if you watch one movie and you see a black gangster, but then you watch another movie with a black like professor intellectual, it could balance it out. Maybe that's the solution, but um, it's a tricky one. It's tricky. Do you guys want to comment on this, or could we move? Should we move to another one? Another question?
Um, well, did Nathan want to go first, or can I?
No, you
Okay,
go
okay.
first.
Well, I certainly agree with you in regards to the certain biases we have, just and that we got from the environment that we grew up in. I'm Israeli. And despite like coming from a fairly left-leaning Israeli family, I've uh, for most of my politically aware life, I've had a lot of biases towards my country. Um, that as I learn more and voice my opinion more, I find myself struggling with and trying to either to get rid of or to not let them influence my views. I think like acknowledging that we have these biases is very important for political discourse.
Thanks, Danito. Nathan, you want to comment on it, or
Uh,
should
no,
we?
no, we can move on.
Cool. Um, so I think, yeah, David also asked, will criminal justice reform entail? Okay, so I mean, I think there's many ways to look at it, but I would say, and United States, I hope I'm quoting this right, has 5% of the world's population, but 20% of the world's prisoners. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. And if you look at the rate in which prisoners end up back in prison, it's extremely high. That term is called recidiv. It's something with an R. It's a very hard word. What's that word? The rate in which someone returns to jail. The rate in which someone returns to jail. Recidivism. Whoever didn't know, that's the word for the rate in which somebody returns to jail after getting released. America has very high recidivism, and the highest, the most prisoners out of any country in the world. Now, China might have more. It's not reported, and they might just execute people instead of putting them in jail. But the situation is not great in America. What can we do? Well, I would say, first of all, start treating drug addicts like patients who are sick rather than criminals. I don't think we have a good system to deal with addiction. People struggle to see addiction as a form of a mental health disorder because you are choosing to take the drug. But what does it say about somebody's mental state where they're willing to risk dying every time they take a drug? That's something psychological. So addicts should not be treated as criminals. I think nonviolent offenders most likely shouldn't be sitting in jail, and if they do, not for long. I guess it depends on the crime. I think jails need to be much better funded, where the goal of a prison system is to rehabilitate somebody, not lock them up and turn them into even better criminals. Off the top of my head, this is what's coming to mind. But just this stuff alone would tremendously impact the criminal justice system. And let's throw out a curveball: start giving prisoners psychedelics. Boom. You want to transform them the psychedelics. You guys have thoughts on criminal justice reform?
I think that one of the biggest destructive factors of the criminal justice system in the United States is that they're used for extremely cheap labor. So many of the production that much of the production that happens of like consumer goods in the United States, especially low value consumer goods, things like plastic forks. A classic one is license plates. These are done by prisoners, and that severely undercuts the value the value of American laborers in that sense. I also think that a great thing that should be expanded in the prison system is the education system. In the prison system, a lot of people are committing crimes of desperation, and I know a few people who entered prison with like an 8th grade reading level and left with a law degree, or left on the route to a law degree. So I think that expanding that is a really valuable thing.
Cool. Yeah, good input. Danilo, any want to chime in? We'll take two more.
Well, I very much agree with you and Natan. I don't have much to add.
Awesome. Okay, never find this blab. Laws outlawing BDS are not seeking to make illegal the act of boycotting, but rather make it so if you boycott Israel, you cannot get a government contract. The public has a right to allocate its taxes. So can you give more clarity on that? So is this saying that if you, let's say, are part of BDS, is that saying BDS can't get government contracts, or if you work at BDS, you can't, as an individual, get a government contract? if the law were to say BDS as an organization can't get government contracts, and you can point to other organizations that are similar in that sense, then I'd say seems pretty fair. I agree. The public has a right to allocate its taxes. We have a right to, but we generally have very little say in it. But I do agree we should have a say in it. So I'd be more okay with that. But if you're saying somebody in BDS is barred from all government contracts as an individual, I don't know. Sounds a little sketchy to me. But please give
Well,
clarity.
they said rather make it so if you boycott Israel, you cannot get a government contract. So not necessarily being a part of BDS, the organization, but just boycotting Israel.
Wait, so a government contract would be, for example, like what's an example of a government, like any work you would do for the government? So if you let's say you work for the government, does that mean you can't boycott Israel?
Well, I don't think it's about individuals. It's mostly about like corporations.
If a
Yeah.
corporation, yeah, even that's honestly but that comes off as bullshit to me. Like, why?
Yeah, I think a corporation or any person
Well,
or
okay, I mean,
body.
like government contract. I need to think on this a little bit deeper. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I guess I'd want to see a clear example, like who this company is, what contract they're not getting. Like I want to be more informed, but I'm not convinced like that it's legit. But maybe I admittedly have not gone um, deep on this. I see that somebody asked, "Do I think where's that comment? Do I think is it ironic that Jews have a right to return after 2,000 years, but Palestinian families who still possess the keys to their homes do not?" Yeah, yeah, it's definitely ironic and unjust. We should definitely find a solution for that. Sure. Um, dun, dun, dun. A lot of heroin. So John goes. A lot of heroin addicts start off with prescription drugs. Yeah, I mean, uh, a lot of my friends got hooked on prescription pills. I also used to take like oxys and stuff like that back in my 20s, and some of my friends got really hooked, and it became expensive, so they moved to heroin. Some died. I've lost a few friends to heroin, um, but yeah, it's fucked up. It's fucked up. The legal drugs are often the gateway. Um, all right, so Marvin Vargas goes, you have to sign a pledge in the U.S. not to participate in BDS. To sign a pledge in U.S. not to participate, in order to get a U.S. government contract. Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like bullshit. Sounds like bullshit to me. Why can't people boycott? You can't get a government job. I could we could list 1,000 things that are worse than wanting to boycott Israel. That says something worse about somebody's character, and they could get a government job. So it's just not it's not like there's just not there's no fairness in how this law is being pushed, and again, this just fuels people saying, you see how much control Jews have, you know. So yeah, I don't. Again, that shouldn't be the reason, right? Something fueling anti-Semitism, if it has merit, you could still do it, right? Our decisions shouldn't be made on based on what fuels anti-Semitism and what doesn't. But if something A is also illogical and also feels it should just be taken into consideration as a factor when you want to make a decision on how a certain policy is gonna, what impact it's gonna have.
Yeah, I think even ignoring the anti-Semitism argument, I just don't think it's right to make it illegal to boycott a country. I mean, as far as resistance to a country go, that's the most peaceful act you can do, right?
True. True.
I think outlawing, like, there is talk about, well, if you outlaw, peaceful resistance, then people are going to turn into other means. But like, even ignoring that, I just think it's a right people and organizations should have, like, to boycott a country. I don't think
I agree.
that's something that should be outlawed.
I agree. Yep. um yeah, Trump signed a law banning American college students from boycotting Israel. That's true, and also bullshit, like fucked up. That was by the Horned Man gave us that information.
I've not heard of that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know how a law specifically targeting college students could realistically exist or be upheld in a court if it was ever enforced and then challenged. So, maybe the truth behind that is a little bit more complex and specific, but it wouldn't do well in a court of law. And as Steve Alisa said, judges in Texas, Arizona, Georgia, and Kansas have all found that the law was unconstitutional. This being the law about the law blocking corporations from participating in BDS.
Hmm. So,
And the
or
Horned
makes
Moon
the
has
point,
now also said,
or good to
sorry,
see you,
yeah,
brother. It's been a long time. Anti-BDS laws are not outlawing BDS. It's just BDS is BDS. Yeah, but it's coming from the government. So it's like literally the government is taking a stance and saying, if you boycott a country, then we're gonna boycott. Yeah, I don't know. Like that's not the government's role to tell its citizens which country they should support or not. Like it just, you know, it seems like a major oversight that is in place because of lobbyists trying to push those laws. Like I don't see how that naturally gets like honestly, it's just a weird fucking law. It's just weird, you know. So, or asked if I'm against the government boycotting political groups. Well, if we're talking about like a political, so let's say a Nazi party, for example, um, you're the case is saying that if you're from a Nazi party, then you can't get a government contract. I think that makes sense, but from what people here have shared, unless we've been mistaken, that they're not only talking about BDS, the organization, they're talking even about just a more general boycott, right? So, for example, let's say I'm not part of BDS, I'm not, but let's say I refuse to buy anything that's produced in the West Bank. Does that mean I can't get a government contract? Because if that's the case, or you got to admit that that's bullshit, right? Because that's not a political group. That's literally me just not wanting to buy things in a territory that's maintained through military rule. It's not controversial. But anyways, let's wrap it up. We could or I'm happy to have you on to talk more about the BDS. Maybe this is an interesting debate topic. Is the ban on BDS legit? And then we could have a more general general discussion about BDS and its merits and if it's anti-Semitic or not, because many people say. Or says, okay, and nothing will happen to you. Well, so no, or that's what I'm asking. Does that not fall under boycotting? If I boycott but I'm not part of BDS, does that mean I'm exempt from the law? Let me know. Because if so, then I think there is a decent case there.
Well, yeah, there's a very big difference in banning an organization and banning an act, right? Like you're talking about like BDS, like the act to boycott Israel, that's one thing, and BDS, the organization, is another.
Correct. And I'll say this: if the ban is on BDS, the organization, then I would want to see that BDS is acting in a way that's beyond just boycotting, because I don't think an organization that's focused on boycotting in itself is ever bad enough to merit something like that. But if the reason behind it is because BDS is fueling hate on college campuses, right? If you can make a strong case that BDS is fueling hate on college campuses, and then you could kind of look at it as like a hate group, I could see the case there. That to me makes decent sense. If it's only targeting the group, and there's reason to believe that they're causing harm to innocent people on college campuses. But again, let's not we got to wrap it up. I said we're going to do an hour, and here we are. I mean, that's usual for these live streams, right? Cool, guys. Well, I think we'll do another one next week where we'll bring on the person who is going to be managing 100 voices. Natan, I'm excited to see what you do with the channel. Danito, I believe this is your first time on the channel, right?
Well, I've watched some streams before, but yeah, this is my first time appearing on stream.
And we've spoken on Twitter a little bit, correct?
Yeah, we follow each other.
Yeah, cool. Well, good to have you here. I hope you join on for a future one. I appreciate your input. Thank you all for tuning in. This was fun. I miss you all, and we're really doing our best to get the ball rolling again with high quality conversations between Israelis and Palestinians. So stay tuned, friends.